She threw the rent check right at my chest. It hit me, bounced off my shirt, and fluttered to the floor like it didn't mean a damn thing. Her eyes were flat and mean when she spat the words. Without me, you'd be nothing. You'd be sleeping in that filthy garage of yours. For a second, I just stood there. I felt my face go hot, my heart hammering like I'd been punched in the gut. I bent down and picked up that crumpled piece of paper. My hands were shaking, but not because I was scared. I looked up at her, and everything in me turned so quiet it almost felt peaceful. I laughed, a dry, rough laugh that scraped my throat on the way out. She flinched like I'd slapped her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the beginning. I'm 42. I've spent most of my life under the hood of a car. People bring me problems. Engines that won't turn over, brakes that scream every time you hit them, and expect me to make it right. Usually I do. I always like that about my work. Machines make sense. People don't. When I met Katia, she was 24 and sharp in a way that made you feel like you had to stand up straighter. She was working the counter at a parts shop where I picked up supplies. I remember the first time I noticed her. She was arguing with a delivery guy about a shipment that had come in wrong. Her voice was low but firm. Her eyes didn't flinch. I thought, she doesn't take shit from anybody. I like that. We started talking after that. Nothing fancy, just small comments over the counter about weather, inventory, dumb jokes about spark plugs. Then I asked her out for coffee. I don't think she expected me to. She smiled in this surprised way that made her look softer. I still remember thinking maybe she was exactly the kind of woman I needed. For a while, I was right. We didn't have much. I was working 6 days a week, just enough to cover rent and keep the truck from dying. She didn't care. We'd share takeout on the couch, watch old movies on my busted TV, fall asleep with her head on my chest. Back then, she said she loved how steady I was, that I made her feel safe. I wonder when steady started to feel boring to her. I saved up for 6 months to buy her a ring. Nothing special, just a simple gold band. I proposed in the parking lot behind the shop because I was too nervous to make a big show of it. She said yes without hesitating. And for a while, we were happy. Maybe not the kind of happy you read about, but something that felt real enough. We moved into a small duplex near the highway. She decorated it with cheap prints and secondhand lamps. Said she liked making it ours. I thought that meant something. Maybe it did, back then. The first few years weren't perfect, but I never expected perfect. We argued sometimes, usually about money. She'd get frustrated that I worked so much, but we still lived month to month. I tried to explain that was just how it was. Nobody gets rich turning wrenches. She'd sigh, look out the window, say, I just thought it'd be different. I'd feel this dull guilt settle behind my ribs, like I'd failed her somehow. Still, we found ways to be okay. A movie on a Friday night. A drive to the next town over for cheap diner breakfast. Little things that felt bigger than they were. It started to change in small ways. She'd get quiet when I came home late, even if I'd called. She stopped asking about my day. Stopped touching me when she walked past. At first, I told myself it was stress. Everybody gets tired. Everybody goes through phases. But after a while, the phase didn't end. One evening, I got home after a 12-hour shift. The shop was short-staffed, and I'd stayed late to help a kid who was still learning the ropes. I came in, carrying a bag with dinner from her favorite Thai place. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. Hey, I said, setting the food down. No answer. I got that green curry you like. She didn't look up, just kept tapping the screen. I stood there, waiting. My shoulders felt heavy. Finally, she sighed and glanced at me. You smell like grease, she said. Then went right back to her phone. I remember thinking, that's it? That's all I get? I washed up, ate alone at the kitchen counter. She never came to join me. After that, it was like she decided being civil was too much effort. Anytime I tried to talk, she'd roll her eyes. If I asked her what was wrong, she'd say, nothing, in that flat voice that meant everything. I started staying later at work because it was easier than coming home. Some nights, she'd sleep on the couch without even bothering to tell me why. I'd wake up to find the bed cold, the living room light still on. I never knew if she did it to punish me or because she genuinely couldn't stand to be near me. You ever lay in the dark next to an empty pillow and feel more alone than if nobody was in the house at all? That was my life for the better part of 2 years. I tried. God knows I tried. I bought flowers. I cleaned the house. I even took a weekend off work to surprise her with a short trip to the lake. She said she didn't feel like going. Didn't look me in the eye when she said it. I put the reservation paperwork in the trash that night. Never brought it up again. And bit by bit, I stopped trying. Stopped hoping. Stopped caring whether she came home or didn't. Some days, I think that was the first step towards saving myself. Some mornings I'd wake up before the sun, lay there listening to the old furnace rattle and wonder what version of her I'd find that day. Would it be the silent one who barely looked at me? The cold one who made everything my fault? Or the bored one who couldn't bother to pretend she still cared? I'd get dressed in the dark, same faded jeans, same black work shirt, and go start the truck to let it warm up. I always packed my lunch the night before, a sandwich, an apple, a thermos of coffee. It felt like the only thing I could still control. One Monday, I came home early. We'd closed the shop for inventory, and I thought maybe we could have dinner together. I stopped at the store for steaks, picked up her favorite salad dressing. When I walked in, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, the screen lighting her face. "Hey," I said, holding up the grocery bag. "I thought we could cook tonight." She didn't look up. "Why?" I set the bag down, trying not to let it get to me. "Because we haven't had a meal together in weeks." She sighed and shut the laptop. "I already ate." My chest went tight. "Would have been nice to know." "Maybe," she said, standing to leave, "but you never ask." I looked at her, stunned. "I'm asking now." She didn't reply. Just walked past me to the bedroom, closed the door with that soft, final click that made my stomach turn. I stood there a while, feeling like an idiot with a sack of groceries and nobody to feed. The next morning, she was in the bathroom putting on makeup. I leaned in the doorway, watching her smooth foundation over the same tired expression she wore everywhere. "Katia," I said, voice careful. "Can we talk?" Her eyes flicked to mine in the mirror. "About what?" "About us." She set down the sponge. "What about us?" I swallowed. "I don't know. You barely look at me anymore. You act like I'm not even here." She turned then, arms crossed over her chest. "Maybe I'm tired of carrying everything myself." "Carrying what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "The bills? The house? Because I've been working my ass off." She cut me off with a snort. "Working your ass off? You come home, eat, and fall asleep in that damn chair. You haven't asked me how I feel in months." I rubbed my jaw, feeling the day's stubble scratch my palm. "I try. You don't exactly make it easy." "Maybe," she said, her voice dropping. "I just don't care anymore." I stood there, watching her turn back to the mirror. In that moment, I knew something had broken that wasn't going to be fixed. I stopped trying to talk after that. Stopped bringing home little things I thought she'd like. Stopped caring if she noticed me leave early or come home late. Most nights, I sat out in the garage after work, drinking coffee that went cold before I touched it. Sometimes I'd take the old rag and polish the dashboard of my truck, just to feel like I was good at something. One evening, I was out there wiping down a set of wrenches when I heard a car pull up. I didn't recognize the engine, but a minute later someone knocked on the open side door. It was Alina, Katia's cousin. She'd always been polite to me, never got in the middle of our business. She stood there in the doorway, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied, setting the rag aside. "Can I come in?" "Sure." She stepped inside, glancing around like she hadn't been in a garage before. "Smells like oil," she murmured, almost smiling. "It's a garage," I said with a shrug. She looked at me for a long second. "You okay?" I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Not really." She nodded. I figured. I leaned back against the workbench, arms crossed. "She say something?" Alina hesitated. "She's been talking. To everyone." My stomach sank. "What's she saying now?" She bit her lip. "That you don't care? That you barely speak? That you're cold?" I felt something tighten in my chest. I wasn't sure if it was anger or just the last bit of disappointment hardening into stone. "She's telling people I'm the problem," I said flatly. Alina didn't deny it. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know you've tried." I looked down at my hands, black grease under the nails. "I thought trying was the whole point." "It is," she said. "But sometimes it doesn't matter." For a second, the garage felt too small, too bright. I rubbed my thumb over the scar on my palm, a reminder of the day I slipped with a socket wrench. At least machines were honest when they broke. Alina shifted her weight. "I'm not picking sides," she said quietly. "I just thought you should know." I nodded. "Thanks." She turned to go, but paused in the doorway. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you stay?" I didn't have an answer. I just shook my head. After she left, I sat in the driver's seat of my truck, staring at the dash. You ever get so tired you don't even feel tired anymore? Like there's just nothing left to run out of? That was me. Over the next couple weeks, Katia hardly came home at all. Sometimes she'd stay with her mother. Sometimes she'd come back after I was asleep and leave before I woke up. I stopped wondering where she went. Stopped caring. One Thursday, I found her in the kitchen sorting through mail. She looked up when I came in, her face pinched in that familiar way. "We're behind on the credit card again," she said. "I paid it last week," I told her. "Well, it doesn't look like it." "I have the receipt," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She rolled her eyes. "You always have an excuse." I opened my mouth to argue, but then I stopped. What was the point? She flipped through the stack of envelopes like she was looking for something else to throw at me. "I don't know why I bother trying to keep this place together," she muttered. I turned to leave. Her voice followed me down the hall. "Maybe if you acted like a man for once." I stopped walking. My hands curled into fists at my sides. But I didn't turn around. I just kept going. That was the moment I knew I was finished trying to prove anything to her. It wasn't worth it. It was a Tuesday when it finally snapped. I remember because the shop was dead slow, and all day I kept thinking maybe I'd try one last time to talk to her. Not to fix it, by then I knew nothing was going to fix it, but just to have something like closure. You tell yourself you need that, like it'll make the ending feel cleaner. But it doesn't. I got home around 6. The sky was starting to go that grayish blue it does in early spring. When I stepped into the kitchen, she was already there, sitting at the table with a stack of bills and her phone face down beside them. She didn't look up, didn't say hi, just kept thumbing through envelopes, her mouth set in that pinched line I'd come to hate. I hung my jacket by the door, took a breath. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She didn't answer at first, just picked up one of the envelopes, tore it open too fast so it ripped down the side. She held up the slip inside. "Rent's late again," she said. "It's not," I told her. "I paid it Friday." Her eyes flicked up, cold and flat. "Then where's the receipt?" "In my glove box," I said. "I'll get it." She let out a sharp little laugh. "You always have an answer. Always a story." I felt my jaw tighten. "It's not a story. I paid it." "Sure you did," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. She dropped the envelope on the pile and leaned back in the chair. "You know, I'm sick of this. Sick of watching you pretend you're holding this together when you can't even do the basics." I walked past her to the counter, set my keys down with more force than I meant to. "I'm not pretending," I said. "I'm working. Every damn day." Her nostrils flared. "Working? You call that working? Sitting in that filthy garage all hours so you don't have to look me in the eye?" I turned around, felt something inside me start to burn. "Don't do that," I said quietly. "Do what? Make this about me being some kind of coward." "If the boot fits," she snapped. For a second, I couldn't speak. I just stood there, looking at the woman I'd spent years breaking my back for, wondering how the hell we'd ended up here. She leaned forward, picked up the rent check, the same one I'd left for her to mail days ago. Her hand shook just a little, but her voice was steady as ice. "You know what?" she said. "Without me, you'd be nothing." I felt something twist behind my ribs. She stood up, walked over to me, and shoved the folded check hard into my chest. "You'd be sleeping in that filthy garage, and you know it." The paper crackled against my shirt. I looked down at it, then back at her face, so tight and mean it almost didn't look like her anymore. And I don't know what I expected to feel. Rage, hurt, anything. But I didn't feel any of it. Just a cold, hollow clarity. Like someone flipped a switch. I bent down, picked up the check from where it fell on the floor. My hands were steady, my voice even. "You're wrong," I said. She blinked. For the first time in a long time, she looked unsure. I smiled. A small, tired smile that felt more like relief than anything else. Then I laughed. A dry, low laugh that scraped my throat raw. She flinched, took half a step back. I tucked the check into my pocket, turned away without another word. I walked into the bedroom, shut the door behind me, and leaned back against it. My chest was tight, but not the way it used to be. Not with dread. With finality. It was over, and I knew it. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Didn't bother turning on the light. I thought about every time I tried to make it work. Every dinner I'd cooked that she hadn't touched. Every night I'd come home hoping maybe that day would be different. It never was. And I was done pretending. The next morning, she left for work without saying a word. I watched her pull out of the driveway from the kitchen window, my coffee going cold in my hand. When her taillights disappeared around the corner, I exhaled. I went to the closet, pulled out the old duffel bag I'd had since I was 20, set it on the bed, started packing her clothes. Not mine, hers. One shirt after another. The dresses she never wore anymore. The shoes she used to save for special occasions that never came. I folded everything neatly, put them in boxes I'd grabbed from the garage. I didn't feel angry, didn't feel sad, just done. When the last box was taped shut, I sat on the edge of the bed again, rubbed my hands over my face. The silence in the house was so thick it felt like a weight pressing on my chest. But it was better than her voice. I stood up, picked up my keys, carried the boxes out to the truck one by one. Each trip felt easier than the last. I took my time loading her boxes into the truck. Didn't rush. Didn't slam the tailgate. There was no reason to hurry anymore. The street was quiet when I pulled away. Early afternoon, that pale sunlight that makes everything look colder than it is. I kept my window cracked, let the wind wash over me. It felt cleaner than the air in the house ever had. Her mother's place was 15 minutes across town. Small yellow house with the same sagging gutters it always had. I pulled up at the curb and turned off the engine. Sat there a moment, both hands on the wheel, breathing. You ever walk into something knowing exactly how it's going to go? I did. Didn't matter. I was done letting that stop me. I climbed out, went around to the back, lifted the first box. It wasn't heavy. Nothing she owned ever weighed as much as the years we'd wasted. Her mother opened the door before I knocked. She always had a way of showing up right when you least wanted her to. She took one look at the boxes, her eyebrows pulled tight. What's this? Kadia's things. Her mouth twitched. You're being ridiculous. No, I said. I'm being honest. She stepped aside, but not far enough that I didn't have to turn sideways to get past. I carried the first box in, set it by the couch. When I came back for the second, she was still standing in the doorway, arms folded. You're really doing this, she said flatly. Yeah, I told her. I am. She's upset, she pressed. You're both upset. You'll regret it. I won't. Her jaw tightened. You think you can just drop her off like a stray dog? I looked her in the eye. You think you can keep talking to me like I'm the problem? Her nostrils flared. You never tried hard enough. I let out a short breath, almost a laugh. You have no idea how hard I tried. I made 3 trips in and out, box after box. Each one felt like closing a chapter. When I set the last one down, she spoke again. Maybe if you put this much effort into your marriage. I turned to face her. I did. For 10 years. And it wasn't enough. Her lips pressed together. You should apologize. You should be the bigger person. I shook my head. Not anymore. You're going to throw it all away? She already did, I said. I'm just the one cleaning up after. She looked like she might spit at me, but I didn't wait to hear more. I turned, walked out into the cold air, and let the door shut behind me. I drove home slow, watching the bare trees slide past. By the time I pulled into the drive, my phone was buzzing. Kadia's name. I didn't pick up. It buzzed again. Her mother. Then her cousin. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and kept driving. That night, the messages poured in. Long voicemails about how I was heartless. How I was ruining everything. How I'd never been the man she needed. At first, I listened. Out of habit, maybe. Then I started deleting them before they finished. The next day at work, my buddy Owen cornered me by the parts counter. You okay? He asked. I shrugged. Fine. He hesitated, scratched at the back of his neck. Kadia's been calling Lisa. Saying you, stepped out on her. I felt my jaw clench. Right. You didn't, he started. I looked him in the eye. No. Owen nodded slowly. Didn't figure you for that. Thanks, I said. We stood there a moment, the air thick with things neither of us wanted to say. You want to grab a beer after work? He offered. Not tonight. All right. You know where to find me. He walked off, and I was grateful he didn't press. By the end of the week, everyone had heard some version of the story. Depending who you asked, I was a drunk, a cheater, a monster, or just a man who'd finally had enough. I didn't bother correcting anyone. The people who mattered knew better. The rest weren't worth the trouble. I went to the notary on a Monday morning to file the papers. It was raining, a cold, spitting drizzle that soaked through my jacket. I stood at the counter, signing forms with a cheap plastic pen, and felt lighter with every page. When the clerk handed me the final document, she said, Sorry it came to this. I looked at her, tired but steady. Don't be, I said. I'm not. I walked out into the rain without an umbrella. It felt good on my face. Like starting over. That night, I sat in the kitchen with a sandwich and a cold beer. No TV, no phone, just the sound of the rain tapping the window. You ever spend so long carrying something that you forget you can set it down? That's what it felt like. I didn't know what came next. Didn't care. I was free. 3 months went by before I saw Alina again. Winter had started to let go by then, though the mornings were still cold enough to leave frost on the windshield. I'd gotten into the habit of waking up before dawn, making coffee in the quiet, eating alone at the kitchen table without feeling like the walls were closing in. Most days, I went to the shop early, stayed late. Work felt good, steady, predictable. People brought me problems, and I fixed them. No one lied about what was broken. That was all I needed for a while. I saw Kadia once. At the grocery store. She was in the next checkout line, talking too loud to someone on the phone. She didn't look my way, and I didn't call her name. We stood there, not acknowledging each other, and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not regret. Just nothing. That night, I went home and slept better than I had in years. It was early spring when Alina called me. I was elbow deep in a transmission job, grease up to my forearms, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands, checked the screen, almost didn't pick up, but something made me press the button. Hey, I said. Hi. Her voice was softer than I remembered. I hope this isn't weird. It's not, I told her. What's up? She trailed off. I waited. I wondered if you wanted to get dinner, she finished. Just to catch up. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't want to. Because I wasn't sure what it meant to say yes. But then I thought about how she'd stood in my garage that night, telling me I wasn't crazy. How she was the only one who hadn't tried to pick a side or tell me how to feel. Yeah, I said finally. I'd like that. She let out a little breath, like she'd been holding it. Good. We picked a diner halfway between my place and hers. Nothing fancy, just Formica tables, cheap coffee, the kind of place where nobody looks twice at anybody. I got there early, sat in the truck watching the rain beat up on the windshield. I wasn't nervous. Not exactly. Just aware that this was the first time in a long time I'd chosen to be around someone because I wanted to, not because I thought I had to. When she walked in, she spotted me right away. Smiled. It wasn't a big smile, more like relief. I stood to meet her, and she touched my arm, warm and light. We sat across from each other in the booth. For a while, neither of us said much. The waitress came by, took our orders, refilled the coffee pot. The clink of cups and silverware was the only noise between us. Finally, she cleared her throat. How have you been? I thought about lying. About saying I was great. But I was too tired for that. Better, I said. Some days it still feels strange, but mostly better. Her eyes softened. I'm glad. I looked at her hands, folded around her mug. She didn't wear much jewelry, just a thin silver ring she twisted when she was nervous. And you? I asked. She shrugged. Busy, but I think about you sometimes. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just nodded. Not in a weird way, she hurried on. Just wondering if you were okay. That's not weird, I said. It's kind. She smiled. Not everyone thought so. Yeah, I said. I figured. We talked for a long time. About nothing, mostly. Work. Her nephews. How the town hadn't really changed. It felt good. Simple. Like something that didn't need explaining. After dinner, I walked her to her car. The rain had stopped, but the pavement still gleamed under the streetlights. We stood there a moment, neither of us in a hurry to leave. I'm glad you came, she said finally. Me too. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. You know, you didn't deserve what she did to you. I swallowed. Thanks. She stepped closer, pressed her palm to my chest. It wasn't romantic, not exactly. More like she was grounding me there, making sure I didn't look away. Whatever happens, she said. You deserved better. I didn't have words for that, so I just put my hand over hers. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something open up in me that I thought was gone. Hope. We didn't make promises that night. Didn't talk about the future. We just agreed to see each other again. That was enough. A week later, she came by the shop. Brought me lunch, nothing fancy, just a paper sack with a sandwich and a note tucked inside. Thought you might be hungry. I kept the note in my glove box. Still do. You ever spend so long carrying someone else's disappointment you forget how to be good to yourself? I did. But I was learning. One day at a time. And that was enough.